All right, we're here for lesson number 2 for our unit over adding, subtracting, and multiplying fractions. So today we're going to build off what we did yesterday, and now we're going to use common denominators and hopefully be able to use the least common denominator to add and subtract fractions. So here's how I can use a common denominator. So this is our second best option. So notice my denominators are not the same today. 8 and 2 are different. So it's like I'm comparing apples and oranges here, and I need to be comparing apples to apples. So how do I solve this problem? I find my least common denominator. What else have we done with least common denominators? Remember when we spent time finding the least common multiple between numbers? That's what we're doing. So what's the least common multiple, or a common multiple? We're doing common multiples, sorry. Common multiple between 8 and 2. Well, here's what I can do. I can multiply my denominators to find a common denominator. So what's 8 times 2? 8 times 2 is 16. Whatever I do to the top, whatever I do to my denominator, I have to do to the top. So how did I get from 8 to 16? I multiplied by 2. So what do I have to do on the top? Multiply by 2. So I end up with 6/16. How did I get to 16 on the bottom? Well, 2 times 8 is 16. So what do I multiply on the top? I multiply by 8. So now I have 8/16. So now I can compare my apples to apples. I have 16ths. So 6 plus, now I do the same thing I did yesterday, right? Now I have my denominators are the same at 16. So now I just need to add 6 plus 8 gives me 14 over 16. What's my rule? How do I always write a fraction? I write it in simplest form. So what's my greatest common multiple? I'm sorry, what's my greatest common factor? They both end in an even number. So I'm going to say 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So my answer in simplest form is 7/8. Now we're going to use the least common multiple. So what's the least common multiple between 8 and 2? The least common multiple between 8 and 2. So remember, we can make a list. Multiples of 8 are like 8/16. Multiples of 2, 2, 4, 6, 8. What's the smallest number in common? 8. So what's my least common multiple? 8. What's my least common denominator? You're catching on. Least common denominator is going to be 8. It's the same process we just did. How did I get from 8 to 8? Well, I didn't change anything, right? So it's like I'm multiplying by 1, so it stays a 3. How did I get from 2 to 8? Multiplied by 4, so I need to multiply the top by 4. You get 7. I'm sorry. Mrs. Hook is brain dead. I get 4. Now when I add my numerators together, I get 7/8. So basically, what's usually going to be the difference if I use a least common denominator? What did we not have to do that we had to do in this problem? If you said in this problem we didn't have to simplify, you're right. So if I find the least common denominator first, I'm probably going to reduce my chances of having to simplify in the end. So I like to do my work in the beginning of the problem instead of the end of the problem. So remember to use this as a reference. How do I do it? I follow these steps. I follow these 4 steps. And then we apply that to our problem. So let's do this together problem. I have 3/5 of something and 1/3 of something. So I can see that 3 and 5 aren't the same denominator. So my rule is I have to find my least common denominator. So my least common, here's my multiples of 5 and 3. So my least common multiple looks like it's going to be 15. So I'm going to rewrite, my fractions. So I'm going to have both of my fractions now be out of 15. So how did I get from 5 to 15? Multiply by 3. So I need to multiply my numerator by 3. So 3/5, my equivalent fraction, is 9/15. How did I get from 3 to 15? Multiply by 5. What do I have to do to my top? You got it. We have to multiply by 5. Now my denominators are the same. They're both at 15. So now I'm ready to add my top numbers. So 9 plus 5 is 14. So 14/15 should be my final answer. Let's do one more problem together. This time it's going to be a subtraction problem. Same idea stays, same idea though. I need to find my least common denominator. So my least common denominator between 8 and 4 is my least common multiple, which, you got it, is going to be 8. So I didn't have to change this number at all. How did I get from 4 to 8? I multiplied by 2. So what do I have to do to my numerator? Multiply by 2. So now I have 7/8 minus 2/8. So 7 minus 2 is 5. Denominator is 8. That cannot be simplified. Now you're going to go ahead and hit the pause button and you're going to try the 2 you try problems, and I'll be back in just a second with answers. All right, here's our answers. We're going to have end up in number 2 with an answer of 9/10. So remember again, when I have to be comparing apples to apples. So I have to find a common denominator of 10, and then I'm ready to perform my addition or subtraction problem. So for this, my LCD is going to be 12. So I multiply by 3. So I'm going to have 9/12 is equivalent to 3/4. And I'm going to have, how did I get from 3 to 12? I multiplied by 4. So I need to multiply by 4. So my final answer here is going to be 1/12. Oops, I think I skipped a page. All right, let's see. We've got 2 more problems that we're going to do together. So I need, remember, the first step is to find the LCD. What's the LCD between 4 and 6? My LCD is 12. So 1/4 becomes 3/12. 1/6 becomes 2/12. I'm adding, so I'm going to end up with 5/12. All right, this is a great problem here. I have 1 minus 4/5. So I need to know, 1 would be a whole number right now. So how do I represent 1 as a fraction? Well, how many parts do I have? Whatever I'm doing is broken up into 5 parts. So 1 is the same as saying 5/5. I got that because whatever my denominator is of my other number becomes my denominator for my whole number. So 5/5 minus 4/5, I'm going to be left with 1/5. So again, it's saying I have a whole pizza. and it's cut into fifths. I eat 4/5. How much of my pizza do I have left? I have 1/5 left. All right, you're going to try the you try problem, so go ahead and hit pause, and then I'll be back with the answers in just a second. All right, hopefully you found the least common denominators between 5 and 4 to be 20. So I'm going to end up with 4/20 plus 15/20, which will be equal to 19/20. And our last problem, our least common denominator between 9 and 6 should be 18. So I multiply by 2, so I get 16. How did I get from 6 to 18? I multiply by 3, so I have 15. So I'm going to be left with 1/18. Okay. So these are our lesson over adding and subtracting with different denominators, and we will do our stamp page at school tomorrow. See you then.